Good evening, everyone. We are happy to have with us today a singer, actor, activist, known for her role in Head Over Heels and her time on RuPaul's Drag Race. You could see her Friday, June 28th, performing at the Gramercy Theater with her collaborator Caswell. Here's a warm welcome to the wonderful Peppermint. How's your day been so far?
Oh, it's been great. Thank you.
No problem. So I guess to get into things, talk a little bit about everything that you've done. You've been in some TV shows, movies, music videos, released albums, collaborated with several prominent musicians, and made Broadway history with your role in Head Over Heels. On top of already very successful drag career, I guess I was wondering if the label drag queen ever feels like a hindrance in terms of it being the thing that people go to when describing you or describing like everything about it.
You know, I actually had this conversation earlier. I was doing another interview today, and they were trying to figure out what the introduction was going to be. And we had this very conversation. Can we just say drag queen Peppermint? And these things are, it's true. My hesitance in being kind of called a drag queen is not because, it's not for the reason most people would think. A lot of people think, oh, you're a trans woman, you don't want to be called a drag queen. I work as a drag queen, and I'm very proud of that. But, you know, usually you want to call people by their highest kind of achievement or title.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Broadway star is perfectly applicable. You wouldn't say Patti LuPone, you know, the lady from down the street.
Yeah.
You know, you would say Broadway diva. And so I'm not comparing myself, but I'm just saying, you know, I have had these accomplishments. It is a lot for people to say in one sentence. And so, you know, context, I guess, matters. But when it's an introduction, yours was fabulous.
Thank you. I tried because I feel like sometimes so many queens just get narrowed down to being a drag queen, but that is just so little of what they've accomplished.
You know, even by definition, whether you've been on TV or not, being a queen and a drag performer just naturally means you're going to have to do with everything that it takes to do drag, getting your costuming, getting your hair, you know, whatever transformation is involved physically. Also, you know, we're getting your music and putting some thought into your act. You know, sometimes booking your own, you know, shows and directing your own shows. And, you know, you're your own seamstress and publicist and designer and musician and you know, being a drag performer is it's a Renaissance profession.
Yeah, definitely. And then since we brought it up already, your time with Head Over Heels, which by all accounts I heard was a real blast. I am sad that I did not get to make it.
You heard? You didn't see?
I was studying abroad, unfortunately.
Okay, you have an excuse.
But yeah, it seemed to amass quite a bit of like a diehard fan base that really turned out and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it really did. You know, this is my first time I've ever been in a play on Broadway, so I don't know. You know, everything that happened to me felt normal, but according to the accounts of other people who were in the show with me, it was quite a devoted and particularly exuberant fan base. Will be probably a cult following later on.
Yeah.
And that's great. I think that just has a lot to do with the fact that the show spoke to so many themes of acceptance, and it really resonated with a lot of people who don't usually see themselves represented on Broadway.
Yeah. And then I guess I kind of wanted to ask your opinion on how often people try to make a distinction between, oh, this drag queen is doing a drag show, and then there is theater, there's real theater. And there's most of the time a drag show is no different than like any of the solo shows that we're getting on Broadway. I guess, why do you think that tends to be the case? Do you think it's like a sort of like delegitimization of drag shows, or do you think there's some merit to making a distinction?
I think context matters. it is, when you say we're going to go to a show, it's good to say, hey, we're going to go to a drag show. A lot of times drag can involve or include elements that other things don't include. Drag usually by definition it can be more political. It's certainly more casual of an atmosphere. And so these are things that describe drag, I think, in a productive way. But where it becomes reductive is not acknowledging the artistry and the kind of the effort, the creativity, the preparation that can go into a drag act. Not all drag acts now are brilliant, but many of them are.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just important to acknowledge that as an art piece, drag has the tools to be transformative and transcendent, sometimes more than the typical theater piece.
Yeah, definitely. And then to talk on sort of like the impact that drag can have, I think a lot of the time drag is associated with like adult themes and adult stuff like clubs, partying, because that's kind of where it proliferated. But there's kind of been an attempt as of late to get it to a younger audience with things such as like drag queen story time. But beyond that, how do you think drag can be introduced to younger people, especially in person?
Well, I do think folks should bring their families to drag brunches all around the world, all around the country. I think, I honestly think that folks are not necessarily going to have to do too much work in terms of bringing their families to drag. I think drag is being brought to the masses via things like Drag Queen Story Hour, of course, RuPaul's Drag Race. And so, folks, all they need to do is just be open. And, we already have drag performers on major film and television projects. Of course, me on Broadway.
Yeah.
So if you've been in any of these arenas, which are not typically drag arenas, you may have encountered a drag queen and been able to kind of feel kind of the magic of drag. So, just sit back and relax and be open, and we'll take care of the rest.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about drag going into the mainstream, you're definitely seeing a lot of changes. Now, you've been in the scene for over 20 years. It's quite a long time. What specific changes have you seen as drag seeps into the mainstream that really stand out to you, for better or for worse?
Well, one of the things that drag, and I even heard RuPaul speak about this, and I think it's really interesting. RuPaul's description of drag is very kind of, it lines up with how I described New York City nightlife. When I moved here in the late 90s, you didn't know whether you were going to dance all night or meet somebody and go home and have a hookup or do drugs or get killed or all of it. But it had that sense of danger. And that was thrilling to a lot of people. And I think that's really why why New York City nightlife has been so notorious over the years. It's earned its place as like this kind of legendary kind of thing where you go out and it's going to be the best nightlife experience ever because it's going to be dangerous and risky and fun and all these things. And it's not so much anymore, usually. And I think drag was the same thing since drag existed in sort of the underground scene in New York City nightlife. It too was risky and dangerous, provocative, had an anarchist sort of attitude and position. But then as drag became more and more popular, I think it was important for the innate performer to distinguish themselves and kind of adopt different characteristics, not necessarily the renegade performer, but also, like the kind of bizarre sort of Stepford wife drag or, the campy drag. There's different styles that emerged and allowing each artist to have more of a unique kind of individuality. And so drag has always had kind of the potential to go mainstream, but it didn't always have the vehicle. And so now with things like RuPaul's Drag Race, certainly, drag is much more mainstream than it ever was. Queens these days are getting, major endorsements from, Fortune 500 companies that are like, we want to be involved in a piece of this. And so I think people are finally seeing that it doesn't just need to be something that's in the shadows. And so for worse was that, It allowed us to curse and say whatever the hell we wanted and talk about any group and be as disgusting as we deserve to be as artists to express ourselves. The flip side of that is that, going mainstream means that you couldn't always do that in every space.
Yeah.
But the benefit of that is now there's queens that are earning over 6 figures a year because they're partnered with Macy's or whatever.
Yeah. Do you feel that as Drag Race has gotten more popular, that it has shifted expectations as to what drag should be?
On a smaller level, yes. I think the largest shift has come from within the drag community. There's a lot of queens and drag performers who have their eyes set on RuPaul's Drag Race. And so in order to do that, I think many of them feel like I've heard of queens, I know that there's queens that really step up their game. The expression is step your pussy up.
Yeah.
Really step up their pussies to kind of already look the part. Spending, whereas, it was kind of seen as edgy and artistic to, grab a trash bag or some curtains to make a dress. Now folks are spending $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on a gown and jewels. The girls on Drag Race do that, but the queens that are not on Drag Race don't need to do that. But I think that they're feeling the pressure to kind of look like they've been on TV, even if they weren't. And so that's kind of one of the biggest shifts that I've seen is that the queens, I even know queens that have gone so far as to move to Los Angeles where they think they'll get more media attention. And so there's a portion of it that's like attention, fame, whore.
Is there anything that you'd like to see when it comes to the future of the drag scene? This could be anything from demographic changes to aesthetic changes to technological innovation, anything.
Well, one of the things that I would like to see just kind of across the board is when we think of drag entertainers, it doesn't just have to be queens. It can obviously it can be kings. This kind of goes along with the mainstreaming of drag. I think it's, drag is right now, drag is for everyone to enjoy, families, and we've been talking about this. And so I think it's important that we allow everyone who enjoys it the freedom to choose whether or not they want to participate in it, if they want to become drag performers. I know that there's a lot of people that want to say, drag is just for gay men to do and that's it.
Yeah.
And I think, that's holding us back. It's keeping yourselves, you gay men out there who just want to say drag is for just gay men, it's keeping yourselves in a box. It's like saying that gay men can't play straight roles.
Yeah.
Or it's something like that. And so I think it's important to allow people into those spaces if they can do it respectfully. If you're not a fierce drag performer, believe me, we will find out and you won't have much of a future. Let the craft decide who can do drag. And then as far as technological advances, I remember, I wouldn't say so much now, but I remember back in the day when we started to see a little bit of a change in the attendance in New York City nightlife. It would go through ups and downs. I remember thinking, why don't we just, this is when Periscope had just come out. Why don't we just have drag shows that are just remote and people can just tune in and pay per view, instead of having to go to a bar. And so I don't know what that would do to the, economy of bar culture, but maybe there's something to it.
I guess to move this out as to queer culture as a whole, queer culture has become progressively more mainstream, and as a result, major corporations have begun to seemingly embrace queer culture.
It's something that we've spoken about on this show quite often, whether this is for the better or for the worse, once again. But we have things like many corporations at Pride Parades. We just talked about partnering with Macy's. And then you have the JetBlue ad at Stonewall. Now, of course, this will help more people access queer culture as a whole. But there's also the subtext that when something is done by a corporation, it's done for the intent of income. That's how corporations work. So what's your take on this growing corporate, I suppose, creep into queer culture?
It is I call it pink pandering. It's very much what it is. And I think, look, ultimately what we want is we want these corporations, these companies, these employers, potential employers to support everyone, all the individual identities in the queer community. That's what we want. And is there a way for them to do that without changing their logo to rainbow? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not going to allow them to get off the hook by saying, we're there for the Gay Pride March, but then, the next day we're gone and we desert you. I'm not going to allow them off the hook. I think, it's important that we express that they should know their place for something like the Pride March and, the 50th anniversary of Stonewall. It's important that we still uplift the voices of the people who historically have been the most marginalized in our community, queer people of color, trans women of color. And so I think that it's important that we don't let that message get lost in the big rainbow celebration that can be corporate, gay America. But I like to view this as the signaling of these companies that they are finally ready to take a step closer to us. And we just need to let them know that it's a one-way door. You can come in, but you cannot get out.
Yeah.
And so once you signal to us, you don't need to permanently change your logo to rainbow, but we are going to hold you accountable. And if you're not stepping up for us and our community, and you're not there for our community and supporting our community throughout the year, the way that you are now, we will hold you accountable.
Yeah.
I think that's the position that we need to take.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And then this is also pretty similar, but the queer community has continued to build up a number of outspoken cisgendered straight celebrity allies, and these allies are coming to become gay icons. How does it make you feel about this whole trend of let's say Taylor Swift being a gay icon?
I don't really view it as a trend. I mean, look, we're talking about Stonewall, and the entire revolution was sparked, or the last straw, I'll say, was, Judy Garland's passing. And she certainly is a queer icon among diva and other fabulous things. And I think I'm sure she knew it. And of course, our community was much more stifled. And I think that this was because there were no positive examples in media of queer people that, for us to kind of latch onto, that we latched onto these divas. And I think we're in the habit of doing that. And we uplift these strong women women are also an oppressed class. And so we hear them speaking out on their own behalf in terms of having the rights and the female empowerment. And I think for so long that message of female empowerment, which has been present in American culture, resonates so strongly with queer folks, with gay men and everyone else in the queer community. And so now we have things like, people like Taylor Swift. Looking ahead to where we need to go, I actually am saying it's about time. I mean, there's always been kind of passive support by these divas and saying, wearing a rainbow thing or saying, let everyone love, just be nice. These messages have come out of our current day pop divas for the longest time. There are people who risked their livelihood. Madonna was definitely one of the people. She earned an NC-17 rating because Truth or Dare, her movie, featured the first ever male kiss, in a wide release film. And so, and her show was getting picketed and boycotted, and she got arrested on stage. And so heterosexual allies, it's not necessarily new that these pop divas are doing that. It's in fact a much safer environment. I don't see Taylor Swift getting arrested.
Yeah.
But I am very happy that this wasn't just putting a little rainbow thing. This was actually the video and everything. The writing is ambiguous. It's not so straightforward, but the video is undeniably queer.
Yeah.
And so I think she's celebrating that. And I like the fact that she has all these different types of bodies in the video. And so, this is kind of an epic thing. And so I don't want to reduce it and kind of look a gift horse in the mouth. We don't need her gifts, but we as a queer community are not going to really be seen or treated as fully equal until we're all looked at the same. And we're not going to be looked at the same until those people on the other side, whoever they are, see themselves as being the same as us. And the catalyst for that, the gateway for that is Taylor Swift. You know? It's not going to be us throwing glitter in their face or throwing a rainbow rock through their window.
Yeah.
It's going to be Taylor Swift, unfortunately.
Yeah. You've done a lot of activism and a lot of speaking out on behalf of the community. And this is a topic that I think a lot of fans of drag, fans of Drag Race, fans of yours are passionate about. But people don't know where to get started when it comes to doing something on their own behalf. So for those who are interested in doing activism for the community, do you have any recommendations as to where they might start and how they can make a difference? And are there any organizations in particular you might recommend?
Absolutely. I do think that we need to look at everyday activism. And so I think that starts with having these kind of uncomfortable conversations that we all had to have right after Trump got elected with our families. I think it starts with things like that, calling out misogyny, racism, transphobia, homophobia when we see it. And I think that these things are all linked. And so, you know, to fight misogyny is to fight homophobia, for instance. And so that's one of the things. You know, look at your own behaviors. If you're going to have a child, let's not do a gender reveal party. These are really small, kind of really subtle things that people can do. In terms of supporting organizations, I do think it's important that we just give regularly and uplift organizations, support publicly organizations like GLAAD and the HRC, and uplift and donate money to organizations that are more grassroots, like the Sylvia Rivera Law Project, National Center for Trans Equality. I posted several in a post about how to be an ally in October when Trump first tweeted about his trans military ban. And there were 30 different organizations that I talked about. And so I'm going to be reposting that again soon. But these are two organizations that would benefit greatly by your support if you're a listener.
And then I guess in terms of getting to understand the drag community and the queer community as a whole, do you have any essential reading
or watching if it's a video of sorts?
Yeah, anything that you'd recommend for people that they want to genuinely get into this kind of information and stuff?
I do think that queer folks, and when I say queer folks, I mean not only gay and trans and bi and non-binary people, but I also mean our allies. I think that our allies can be queer just by association, which means that I'm only saying that because I want to hold them accountable and responsible for our betterment as well. And so I think some much important reading and or watching is some watching. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't say Paris is Burning, of course. There's a lot of queer, you know, luckily there's algorithms in YouTube and on Google. So when you search for Paris is Burning, there's gonna be a lot of other recommended material that someone can watch. And you can even look to stuff today, like Pose, for instance. I think that that's a really important show that we have to support because it's, queer folks of color who are so rare that we have been featured in the way that we are being featured and given positions of power in front of and behind the camera. And it's really entertaining. They watch things like that. There's a couple of other books that I can recommend. A Transgender History by Susan Stryker. This is must-read material. I think it's absolutely important. Trans Bodies is important. That's by Laura Erickson Scroff. That's important. Another one is The Whipping Girl by Julia Serrano. These are some important books that I read. And finally, Redefining Realness by Janet Mock. These are some great reads.
So in the beginning of the show, we were talking about how you want to be defined. But there are a lot of ways that other people around the country and in general have defined you. I have your Wikipedia page right here.
Oh, no.
And you have that you're best known as a fixture in the New York City nightlife scene and as the runner-up on the 9th season of Drag Race. It also notes in your intro paragraph that you became the first trans woman to originate a principal role on Broadway. And it's well known that you are the first trans woman to come out as such on RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yes.
But when it comes to you as a legacy, what do you want to be known for? What do you want your line in history to be?
That's a good question. I don't know because I don't think I'm finished yet. Hopefully it'll be like president, or something. I don't know. All those things are great, and they're true, most of them. Everything on Wikipedia is not true. But it's really tough because I feel like I'm so young, and I feel it's so interesting. I feel like I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
So I don't know the full answer to that, but I would like whatever the moniker is. I would like I think I want exactly what everyone else wants, is that their impact to be lasting after they're long gone.
Yeah.
And I would like my legacy to be one that speaks to uplifting and making things better for my community.
Awesome. And then one last question. With all the different things that you've done already and all the things that you've tried, what's next for you? Is there anything that you're aspiring to try out? Is there anything that you haven't done in a while that you want to do again?
I'd like to go on vacation. That would be nice. It's Pride season, so I can't look much further than tomorrow. I have a bunch of stuff happening. I'm really excited about a podcast that's coming out that I'm hosting with Caswell.
Awesome.
On Pride, New York Pride, which is World Pride weekend, the 27th. It's on Forever Dog. Folks can tune into that and get your podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It's called It's a Mess. It's an advice podcast. In addition to, then the next day I have my concert with Caswell. And so these are things that I have like something on the calendar every day. I am excited to go and see the release of The Queen. It's a documentary that was in, I think, 1960s documentary about a drag pageant, but it's so much more. And I would like to add that to the list of must-see programming. And that's playing in limited release on larger screens here in New York. You have to look up The Queen. It has Mother Flawless Sabrina. And Crystal LaBeija, who everyone knows. She's got some sayings that have gone down in the lexicon and people don't realize it, that they come from her. So, I got a busy calendar. I don't know what's next. I'm writing some new music right now. So an album is coming out in the next year. And next week, watch out for it's not even a secret now. I'll be making a guest appearance on a couple of TV shows. Pose, for one, and that's not why I told you to watch. But next week episode, I will be on Pose, and it's really interesting because the episode deals with violence against trans women, which is very poignant and relevant. And so there's plenty. You won't get bored. Google me. You'll see me, y'all.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you.
No problem.